across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning and happy Friday. The weekend is almost upon us. Well, it's upon me, but I'll be working it, but there you go, hopefully you won't. Not that I'm not looking forward to working, because I believe that work is wonderful. I enjoy working. I actually feel much happier when I'm sitting in this studio presenting than when I'm left to my own devices and have to find out how to entertain myself. So thank you. And hopefully you'll join me on Saturday and Sunday, but hopefully you don't have to work and you get to spend some quality time, I don't know, kicking up your heels, seeing family, watching some sport on the box, going to a farmer's market, maybe buying the Christmas tree. Is it too soon? I don't know. Yeah, thank you ever so much for joining me again today. A bit of a quick turnaround for me because I was drive last night and here I am in my normal slot. Okay, it does mean actually I kind of feel like all of these stories, I have chewed them over a lot, but there is always more mastication to do when it comes to the schemes and the machinations of this government. And that is what we are going to get up to. We're going to be drilling down even more into those migration and asylum figures because they're pretty startling. And I want to get to the bottom of it. It's all very well when someone gives you a picture and says, did you know asylum seekers count for almost half of net migration? Okay, let's break that down. Where are they from? Who are they? What is net migration? What is the figure for that? What is gross migration? That's always the one that gets hidden. You've got to look out for that because it attaches itself to, as well, the number of Brits who have left. The emigration from this country has essentially been like Exodus. Who are these people? Where are they going? And why are they leaving? It's all very well people going, oh, well, you know, it's foreign nationals who came over here and they've gone back home. Is it? Or are we going to be facing a massive brain drain? What does that mean for the shape of society? I think these are massive existential questions that, quite frankly, we deserve as a British public to have answered. And so that is what I am going to endeavour to do today. If you want to throw in your own 2 bits, or perhaps there's a question that you might want me to put to a particular guest. There's a sort of burning fact out there that has failed to have an airing that you think is that needs to be addressed, then give me your thoughts. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call if you want to speak to me live in the studio. Your normal network rate. If you'd rather send me a WhatsApp message or indeed lay down a cheeky little voice track on WhatsApp in the form of a voice note, it's 03444 99 1000. If you'd rather send a text message because you're old school, you can do that as well. 87222 is the number to do that, and you have to write the word talk before you text. That way the message knows to come into this studio here and it doesn't start bouncing around off the shard and off that thing that looks like a giant cheese grater, smashing around like a pinball in Canary Wharf and somehow getting lost in the ether. Okay, right. Let's crack on, shall we? I'm joined first by the former head of UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Good morning, Tony.
Morning, Alex.
Now, the interesting thing when we get to migration figures is we get top-line numbers, but we don't really get much of the detail. And it's up to us then to dig down into this and really understand and get a shape of what is going on. So first of all, let's talk about the brain drain, because what is quite astonishing is quite how many Britons, especially young Britons, are leaving the country. 174,000 16 to 34-year-olds, essentially the future of the workforce, have fled our high-tax state in the year to March, accounting for just over two-thirds of Britons leaving the country. So these aren't pensioners going to enjoy a retirement somewhere sunny. These aren't foreigners who are going back home, having come over and earned some money and contributed to the economy, as people would like to say, and then returning back from whence they came. These are the very people that we need to retain in the United Kingdom. What is going on? Where are they going?
Yeah, so Alex, these figures, they are prone to spin, huge amounts of spin by different political parties. You're right, you do need to dig around below the surface. I spent most of yesterday analysing them or speaking to other people that have been analysing them to get to the bottom of this, but you're right. Although the 204,000 is a very good net migration figure compared with 700,000 last year and nine. So everyone says, "Oh, this is really good. We've got a grip on immigration." The truth of the matter is, as you say, that actually we've got a net outflow of
Yeah.
British people, and the net outflow of British people is 109,000. So there's 109,000 more British people leaving the country than entering in this period, and also a net outflow of European nationals, 70,000 more EU nationals left during this period than entered. So the entire intake has been from non-EU countries, Alex. That amounts to 383,000 people that came in with visas. And of those, when you break those down, only 14% of those were actually coming to work. The vast majority of those were dependents of people already here or from students. And that is although it's 383K, it is a city the size of Newcastle or thereabouts that is being imported
And
from non-EU countries,
this is
whilst as you say, we
astonishing.
are losing Brits and Europeans who are sort of more traditionally been here for a longer period. So there's a pretty big demographic change going on in the
Right.
country, Alex. It's worth talking about, I think.
Absolutely. That is astonishing. I did not know those figures. This is, like you said, you call it a demographic change. I'm going to call it a civilizational change. Because what we are essentially seeing, when you talk about non-Europeans, we're talking about Westerners, essentially. This isn't about colour of skin. This is about culture. And when you just told me there that only 14% of 383,000 who have come over from, I'm going to suggest it must be therefore largely the developing world, are not working. What are we? The United Kingdom of Oxfam? I mean, this is utterly catastrophic. When you look at the productive workforce, the young people leaving, and then replacing them with a lot of people who essentially are going to require the state to fund them if they're not working. They'll still cost us, whether or not they're on benefits with the health service, education, use of roads, so on and so forth. But also what we are essentially doing is turning up the volume and watching the United Kingdom fundamentally change its population quite radically, quite rapidly. And that is deeply unsettling for so many people. What were the gross figures? Because like you said, it's sort of, we had the fanfare, oh, net migration is lower than it's been for so long. And I'm like, hold on, if you subtract the number of emigres from this, the gross figure of people still coming to this country is eye-wateringly high, given that, for the last 2 decades, we've had promises of bringing migration down to the tens of thousands. And it's in stark contrast, looking at that and learning of the 383,000 from non-EU countries, 14% of which work and the rest, Lord knows. It's in stark contrast with what Donald Trump is putting in place in America, which is essentially saying no more immigration from the developing world. He used the term third world. I'm not sure what we're supposed to say these days. But have you, in your history as former head of UK Border Force, seen a picture quite like that?
No, I worked in the Home Office for 40 years, from immigration officer right the way up to the top job between the 70s and 2013 when I left. And I have never seen these sorts of levels of immigration, be they legal or illegal, Alex. And my main concern for our country is, in my experience, we do need to control immigration to levels where we can sensibly integrate newcomers into our societies without creating community tensions. And that's the other thing that really worries me, Alex, which you report upon regularly on your show, is community unrest, because people are making it very clear, I think, not just through the polls, but even in the case of illegal migration by protest, that they've had enough of this. And it's not that difficult to turn off legal migration. You could quite easily do that. And it's the sort of thing that Trump's talking about doing, is just stop issuing visas. If you haven't got a visa, you can't get on a plane to get here. You will be denied boarding and you won't be able to get into ferries and whatever. So you would have to resort to irregular routes or illegal routes. So it is possible for us, if we wanted to stop this. And for all of those 380,000 people to say, well, we're going to stop that, because we're not going to accept any more students, any more family reunification. Anyone who's not economically active will not be given a visa. And you could reduce this quite quickly if you wanted to do that. Your problem is that you are then driving a lot of people to illegal immigration. And we've got a real problem there, Alex, with you look at the asylum figures that came out yesterday, are frighteningly high, 110,000 asylum applications. All of those people have come here under the pretext of either coming without a permission on a small boat or in a lorry or through the common travel area, or even more worrying, they are coming on visas. We are issuing visas to people to come here ostensibly to work or to study or to visit, and then when they get here, they're claiming asylum. That is not what the visa system is about. And I worked as a visa officer, believe it or not, back in the day out in Bangladesh, and I interviewed people and asked them, well, what do you want to go to the UK for? And they would say, well, I'm going for 2 weeks for a holiday. Well, how much do you earn? 30 quid a year. You know, what's your job here? Oh, you know, I basically, you'd refuse those visas. Of course you would, because there's a lack of credibility that you're actually really going for a visit or for a student or for, so the vast majority of visas used to be refused. I'm afraid a lot of that process now, because of sheer volume, Alex, has been automated. A lot of this is done by computers. We're not interviewing people in the visa posts around the world. We're not doing those assessments. And I think the Home Office really needs to get a grip of those 50 odd thousand visas that are being granted to people. We can check them because we get the fingerprints, right? You give your fingerprint when you apply for a visa, and when you turn up here, we fingerprint you again. You claim asylum, and we say, well, wait a minute, you know, you told us back in, you know, Lahore, what was it, you know, 6 months ago, you were coming here on a 2-year study. Suddenly you want asylum. Well, you should not have been given a visa in the first place, right? If you feared persecution from Pakistan, you should not be given a visa, and that's credibility, and that means we're granting too many visas to people that we shouldn't be.
So this is what I was going to ask you, which is of the 383,000 coming from non-EU countries, which nations are topping that list? Where are these people coming from?
It's primarily from the Indian subcontinent, potentially Pakistan, India, Bangladesh are the main influx. I think a lot of that, and from Africa, but a lot of this is symptomatic of the Boris wave. In that, you know, people who came during the Boris wave are now seeking to bring over their dependents, and you know, so you've got to now. The government have been talking about this, haven't they? They've been talking about saying we're not going to allow family reunification in certain categories. We're not going to allow indefinite leave to remain in certain categories. But as things stand, you know, then you still have the opportunity to apply for those visas, and they are still coming over. So this is a dial that could be turned. I think it's really important your listeners do understand this. It's not beyond our capability. It is probably really difficult.
I think the audience really does understand that should the government decide, they are the government. I am sick to death of hearing the prevarications, the circumlocutions, the lies, the spin. Oh, we can't do it. Oh, well, the ECHR. Oh, international law. No, the government have it within their gift to be able to create a big red button that they can smack at any point and go, stop. This has to end right now. They don't want to. And that is what is heartbreaking for people living in this country who are seeing their streets radically change, their communities utterly transformed, and not in a way that they feel comfortable with. And you cannot blame people for feeling like that. You cannot judge people for saying, I once lived in a neighbourhood where I knew everybody in my cul-de-sac, the Davises, the Joneses, the Smiths, the Robertsons, and now I don't know who these people are. They don't speak my language. We don't have anything in common. They don't respect the neighbourhood in the way that their predecessors did, because they helped build this neighbourhood. And quite frankly, I don't know what my country is becoming anymore, because it is heartbreaking. And humans are naturally wired up to think like that. As a species, we are tribal animals. And this great social experiment, this civilizational distortion at the hands of these feckless politicians who are turning this mass immigration into a neo-religion is a dangerous, dangerous game to play, because I think you're right, Tony. I think that what we are going to see, if things increase at this rate, or even if things don't radically get put into reverse very soon, is we are going to see a complete dismantling of society in this country that is going to be a pretty horrific spectacle. Tony, thank you so much for your honesty and your candour, and for digging down into those statistics for us. And far worse than I even expected. Far worse than I even expected. What are we? Why don't we just put a big red carpet on the White Cliffs of Dover and say, do you know what? If you're not from Britain, come, and the last few people here who are working, who are breaking their backs to try and save what is left of this country, will just give it all to you, regardless of who they are. Come on, help yourself at the buffet of Britain. And meanwhile, everybody else who's fed up with that, the younger generation, 2/3 of those who have left between 18 and 35, they've just gone, well, it's not for me. It's very clear the people in power don't like me. They don't see my future. They're not prioritising me. They're not putting me in the front of the queue. They're not honouring the fact that I was born and bred here, that my parents, my grandparents, their parents and grandparents helped build this great nation. What is there? This is not a country. This is a blimmin' farce. I'm off. And, you know, I can't blame them because I feel a sort of strange existential depression over all of this. In some moments I'm thinking, do you know what? Maybe I should zip off to Poland or Hungary or somewhere where I can still smell the reality of Christendom, because I don't even know what's going on anymore. I'm fed up with it. It is dangerous, it is disrespectful, it dishonours everybody who laid down their life for this country, who fought in blood, sweat and tears to build every brick of this land. And for what? To give it away to anyone who fancies turning up? How dare you do that? This is not your country to throw away just because you've come up with some radical Marxist religion that you think is the right thing to do. Put a sock in it. We need to get this government out. They're revolting. Oh, right, I'm going to take a break now because I need one. But don't go anywhere because I need you to help me get through the day. Give me a call, 03444991000. Share with me the pain, the madness of what is going on. Send me a WhatsApp on that number as well, 03444991000. You can leave me a voice note. Let it all out. Just let it all out, OK? Therapy. 8722 is the number to text, like the word talk before you message. Back in a moment.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist. exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Air conditioning's broken, Britain's broken, my spirit is broken, and soon my back is going to be broken from all the taxes I'm going to have to pay. How are you doing? Let's find out, shall we? Let's speak to Daniel, who is in Epsom. Hi, Daniel.
Alex, how are you? Big fan.
I don't know what the word is. I mean, I'm effing annoyed, actually.
Yeah. Well, we need to be kind of clear about what is actually going on. So the native British people, for around about 30 years, have consistently voted against. They've asked for legal immigration to be exceptionally low and selective, and to stop illegal immigration. Okay. And successive governments of both blue and red have ignored us. And I don't know if they're following the Kalergi plan or what's going on. But what we're seeing is millionaires, billionaires, and anyone with skills are currently getting out of this country. And we're importing millions of people from the third world who aren't really benefiting us as a country in the whole. And we've currently got about 73 million people trying to use an infrastructure which I think fit for about 50 million people, okay? Nothing publicly run works. We can see our towns and cities decline and degrade and things getting worse and ghettoisation. My honest advice to my own kids would be, unless reform can turn this around and be bold and brave and deport a hell of a lot of people, I would say to my kids in a decade, you find somewhere in Eastern Europe or find somewhere to go, because, yeah, it's just getting worse. You can see it with your own eyes.
If someone had said to me when I was growing up, you know, when you're in your 40s, you are going to observe a massive civilisation to Britain, a massive civilisational change, that Britain will no longer be Britain, that actually most native Brits will leave, and instead people from all around the world, from very different cultures, religions, with different languages, are going to replace them. And so what will be left of Britain by the time you yourself are a pensioner will be totally unrecognisable. If someone had said that to me when I was growing up, I just wouldn't have believed them. I'd have thought, no government does that. No,
Alex,
no sane government does that to its own country. Well, I mean, the purpose of a government is to look after the country, to protect the country. And that means the people who are the foundations of that country, who have always been there. And yet it is a sort of neo-religion, this idea of statelessness, this idea that to be British isn't about being born here. It isn't about speaking English. It isn't about being culturally Christian, that it's just some amorphous concept. You're British if you're standing on a little bit of land in the middle of the ocean. That's all it takes. The very idea of a cultural identity in the West has been eradicated. And yet what really disgusts me, talking about two-tierism, is while our own cultural identity is being destroyed, erased, mortgaged, sacrificed, you name it, we are being made to get on our hands and knees and kiss the feet of every other culture. We're being made to say, oh, yes, let's shove some Ramadan lights up Regent Street, shall we? You know, let's celebrate Diwali. Look, I don't mind people celebrating their religions, OK? When I was in India, I celebrated Diwali. When I lived there, I blimmin' love a bit of Diwali. But if I wanted to go and enjoy Hinduism, I would go to India. If I wanted to go and immerse myself in ancient Islamic culture, I would go to the Maghreb. You know, what I cannot tolerate is the idea that everything that has been us that has been us for centuries, that my grandparents sacrificed for. My great-grandfather is dead in a field in France because he believed in maintaining the concept of Britishness and the nation-state. People died in their millions,
Alex,
to save this country. And that person, that thing, in 10 Downing Street, in the stroke of a pen, can just will it all away. What a vile human.
Yeah, I agree, Alex, 100%. And I also think if we'd have had a crystal ball, if my granddad's generation would have had a crystal ball in 1951 and they could have seen today, they wouldn't have believed it. They would have...
Yeah, why wouldn't have believed it even 5 years ago? That's what's staggering, Daniel, the pace of change. We've been moaning about immigration for a long time, but even 5 years ago, I wouldn't have anticipated things getting as ludicrous as they are today. It is a wanton destruction of our country. Yeah. It's got to be willful, and I think that is just sick. I think they're purposefully destroying our country. I mean, I grew up in SE21. I'm 48. And I can remember 1997, there was about a quarter less people milling around, right? It was much more homogenous. You had black and Asian, but it was much more homogenous, much safer. You know, London was London then. And in basically half of my life, the second half, you've just seen complete decline and degradation. Things just getting worse before your eyes. And the biggest contributing factor to nothing working and the decline of Britain is immigration from the third world. It is, we know that, but, you know, I've been saying this for a long time. Being ostracised, demonised. They tried to cancel me. Guess what? They didn't manage it. And I knew I was on the right side of history back then. I'm glad to say I still am, and I'm going to carry on fighting. Daniel, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Tristan, who is in Bolton. Hi, Tristan.
Hello, Alex. Can I just say I love how passionate you get about the UK. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Well,
it's our country, isn't it? It's ours.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. But unfortunately, after Wednesday, I've decided I'm not living here anymore. Fortunately, I've got a property in Hungary, near the Croatian border. So I'm going there. Because why should I graft them? Why should people of this country have to graft to pay for people who can't?
Do you know, I don't.
Who won't?
In many respects, I don't blame you. It breaks my heart every time I hear a Brit say, I'm going to somewhere that now resembles Britain more than Britain itself does, which is essentially what you're saying. And there's been a sort of video, a promotional video for tourism to Hungary, government-backed, that was released this week. And actually, rather than say, oh, come and have a look at our beautiful churches or our gorgeous landscapes, it says, come here because we're a safe country, because we control immigration. Like, they know.
It's an amazing country. I bought a house there 2 years ago. I got divorced. I couldn't afford to buy a property in the UK. So I had a look around Eastern Europe. Went to Hungary, never been before. Beautiful country. I bought a property over there that would probably in this country cost upwards of £2.5 million. I got it for less than £100,000.
Don't you give people ideas, Tristan. They'll all be moving out with you. And like I said, I cannot really blame them. Well, listen, safe travels. I hope you still stay tuned to talk. And wish the rest of us luck. Because like I said, I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to carry on fighting. Even if I'm the last woman standing, you just try and make me stop. Tristan, thank you ever so much. OK, we're going to take a short break now. But pleased to say, actually, coming out after the break, I'm joined in the studio by a veteran of United Kingdom politics, former Business Secretary Sir Vince Cable. We're going to be talking, amongst other things, about the Workers' Rights Bill, which has gone up to the policy cemetery in the sky. Thank goodness. Well, sort of. The first day Workers' Rights Bill. It's now 6 months. We're going to be discussing the detail of that just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm delighted to say, and honoured in fact, to be joined by a political big beast, for want of a better phrase, the brilliant Sir Vince Cable, who is former business secretary. Thank you for coming and joining me in the studio. Now, as former business secretary, let's get down to business and talk about business, which is, during my show last night, it turned out that Sir Keir Starmer has U-turned on the Day One Workers' Rights Bill and has reframed it essentially as all of these privileges or all of these rights come into play after 6 months. And there has been a bit of a backlash from the Labour Party backbenchers because, of course, this was a manifesto pledge. But do you think, had it gone through, they say that, well, it wouldn't have passed through the Lords. Do you think, had it gone through, and if workers were able to sue for unfair dismissal on day one or get paternity leave or sick leave, whatever it may be, that that would have been a burden that could be shouldered by businesses in Britain?
No, I think it would have been a problem. I mean, I was actually the minister who brought in legislation to extend the unfair dismissal time period from 1 year to 2 years, and they're now reversing that. So it's difficult striking a balance here. I mean, there are some exploitative employers, we all know that, but the more the difficulty you put in the way of good employers who hire unsuitable people and then can't move on, the more difficult it is to hire. And, you know, potentially with the combination of the minimum wage and the national insurance, there is a real risk that a generation of young people are going to find it very difficult to get into the labour market. So I think the balance had to shift, and I think the government's right to have done a U-turn on this. And it's easy to, you know, do popular rhetoric around workers' rights, but I mean, I had to deal with the issue of 0 hours contract, for example, which is another contentious issue. And it was clear that some people were being abused, but when we looked into it, we found there were very large numbers of young people, single parents, students, elderly people who wanted to continue working, who benefited from having flexible labour arrangements. So we decided to back off banning it. We excluded the more extreme prejudicial measures, but we refused to ban it. So I think you've got to be careful to get the right balance, and I think the government's right to have retreated from its, you know, quite advanced position on labour rights.
Do you believe then that this government's really sort of dealing, by and large, I mean, yes, they have had a U-turn, another U-turn, but a lot of their politics seems to be hinged upon ideology that when it comes into contact with the real world just doesn't stand up to rationality?
Well, I don't think the labour rights issue is an ideological question. It's a question of power. You know, who has the final call? Is it employers or is it organised labour? And you know, there's a role for both. I mean, when I was in government, I reduced some labour rights but upheld others. And I think what had happened, they'd made a very strong commitment through Angela Rayner to put through a big package of measures that the trade unions liked, but it's not just employers that are pushed back, but, you know, my party and the Tories in Parliament have said this is actually going in the wrong direction. It's going to, you know, prevent Britain recovering and employers doing more to grow and invest. So we've got to shift the balance back the other way.
Let's talk about the budget. What did you make of the approach of Rachel Reeves? Because it is my understanding that essentially the government had been told you've got to sort out the bloated welfare state. It is unsustainable. And we've got to get growth in the economy. And it seems to me that she's sort of, well, in terms of bailing out the debt to GDP ratio, it's been a sort of thimble here and there, that she's going to come back for more, that I cannot see any sort of green shoots of hope with her particular agenda. And instead of actually tackling the bloated welfare state, if anything, she's added more to it. Do you think that's a fair summary?
Well, actually, I would have defended getting rid of the two-child limit because it was hitting a lot of low-paid workers in work. 70% of the people were actually in work, and you know there were, you know, families on low pay, one parent staying at home looking after children, and it's causing a lot of child poverty. But your general point is right, that we have a rapidly growing welfare bill. The problem is people like me, actually. It's there's a growing percentage of the national accounts which are having to be spent on elderly people, with the triple lock pension, with the growing health bill. And if we're wanting to deal with, the welfare budget, somebody's got to tackle that and make tough decisions about the triple lock, for example.
What about, we had migration statistics out yesterday, and when you drill down into them, some of the figures are quite startling. We've had 383,000 people come over to the United Kingdom from non-EU countries. Only 14% of them are working. These are either students, dependents. We also know that asylum seekers have accounted for half of net migration. Do you think that we're now in a situation where even people on the left can look at what's going on and say, this is uncontrollable, this is going to lead to huge problems societally if we go down this road even further?
I'm just absolutely baffled that people are now complaining about the fall in net migration. I mean, when it was high, there was far more people coming in than leaving. People said this is absolutely terrible, pressure on public services, how are we going to cope with it, pressure on house prices, rent. Once it comes down, I would have thought that all those problems diminish, but people complain and say now there's a brain drain.
It's the problem that the idea of net migration itself is it obscures the reality of the situation, because we know that what's happening is a vast number, an unprecedented number of young working Brits are leaving, 18 to 35-year-olds. We're talking about 110,000 of them who have left the country. And as I said, those who have come in, 383,000 of them from non-EU countries, only 14% of whom work. So we're losing essentially potentially our future workforce. We're having a brain drain, these people deciding they don't want to be here anymore, and replacing them with people who the state is going to have to support. And also we need to talk about potentially what that looks like in our communities, how that impacts social integration, the perception of the ordinary man and woman as to whether or not this is fair.
Well, I don't think your characterisation is right, actually. I think a lot of the people who've been leaving have been EU citizens who were made to feel they weren't welcome after Brexit. They've gone back home. Wages in Poland are probably now higher than they are in the UK, so why stay? And that accounts for quite a lot of the emigration. And if you're talking about the immigration, a large percentage of that, as you mentioned, are students. But actually, overseas students make a major contribution to the British economy. A handful stay behind, many of them because they're graduating into postgraduate jobs, because they're highly valuable in the science community and so on, but the vast majority return anyway. So the fact that a lot of them are students is neither here nor there. There is a very specific problem with the asylum system, as we all know, but that hasn't changed because of these numbers. It is the small boat problem. And, we know that it's very difficult to tackle because we don't have the legal instruments to do that.
So people out there who are listening to the news, who are looking at these figures, who may be living in a particular town or city where they feel like their neighbourhood has drastically changed and are saying, my goodness, we are doing something to this country that I didn't anticipate happening, that they've got no reason to worry, that we're not radically changing the face and the look and feel of Britain.
Well, I'm a bit longer in the tooth than you are.
Indeed you are.
I remember the arguments in the 1960s when we had Enoch Powell. As it happens, I had a mixed marriage. My late wife was Indian, and so we were very conscious of people saying exactly what you're now saying, and that was half a century ago. So this whole argument about changing Britain, reflects the fact that Britain has now become a much more mixed country. I mean, like all developed countries, actually, the overseas-born, the non-white population, if you put it in those terms, is actually as a proportion of the population not fundamentally different in the UK from any other developed country. And I think we're just going to get used to the fact that the world is a more open place, and we should welcome people who've got good skills.
You don't worry that people aren't getting used to it, because there's definitely, you can see across the whole of the Western world with the changes in political polling, populist parties, this audience messaging me, calling me, they don't want to have to get used to this. That's the problem with all of this. The ordinary Brit out there doesn't want to see their neighbourhood radically change. They're not comfortable with it. Whether that might make them in the eyes of some racist or far right, some might say that that's a sort of natural inclination of the human condition. And so are we not sort of embarking upon a kind of perilous social experiment?
No, it isn't a social experiment, but it is social change. I mean, I was in the West Midlands a couple of days ago, and I was at a very mixed school, utterly brilliant, you know, people actually working together, good leadership, very high education standards. But outside in the street, there were, you know, not Union Jacks, but St George's flags from people making the kind of point that you're making. But no, I don't see any problem with having a, you know, large majority of people who've come from overseas, providing they're, you know, young, they contribute to the labour force, they contribute to the country.
What about those people that do? What about the fact that we know that there are plenty of voters out there who do have a problem with this change, and we can't ignore that? We can't just say, well, you know, you're going to have to lump it, because we are beginning to see people, like you said, protest peacefully, perhaps by putting up the national flag. But at what point do we reach a tipping point?
Actually, hostility has actually declined over the years very substantially. I mean, I saw this in personal terms. My dad would probably have been a Reform Party voter. He was, you know, the old kind of right-wing working class kind of attitudes. He hated the idea I was marrying somebody of Indian origin, but actually 4 or 5 years later he accepted it, welcomed his daughter-in-law. We had a, you know, very happy set of relationships. And if you look at the polling, there's currently there's been an upsurge in concern about immigration, but actually over a 50-year period, the number of people who are hostile and who are worried about the kind of concerns that you're expressing has actually fairly steadily declined over time.
Even though Reform are leading in the polls?
Well, that's meaningless, right? I mean, the Lib Dems have been leading in the poll between elections at times past. I got into politics, we were almost 50% of the public, I think, back in 1983 when I first stood for Parliament. These things are meaningless. You've got a surge of populist right-wing views from Nigel and his team, and you've got Mr Polyansky and the Greens, a surge of populists on the left. But that, you know, when it comes to an election, I suspect the outcomes will be very different.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to me. Sir Vince Cable, former business secretary. Right, we're going to take a short break now. Remember, you can keep your thoughts coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you'd like to be patched through to the studio. It's your normal network rate. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to send me a text message. Write the word talk before you text. OK, back after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it turns out that France has decided it's going to bring back military service. Why? What's going on there? Apparently it's because, Russia could come and invade the country or invade somewhere in Europe, and so they're going to potentially need people trained up, ready to put boots on the ground. Is that really the case? Is that really the motivation? Is it a good idea? Should we be looking at doing something very similar in the United Kingdom? Let's speak now to Mace Gifford, who is a former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine. Mace, it's always great to have you on the programme. You're one of my favourite human beings on this planet for your intrepid bravery and your honour. Now, talk to me about France bringing back military service. What do you think underlies this? Is this about the threat from Putin? Is this potentially something else? What would be your guess?
I think it is. I mean, a lot of the Scandinavian countries, Germany as well, have been building up their military forces. In fact, the whole of Europe is rearming at the moment. And there's a big conversation going on at the moment about conscription, about getting boots in the army and having a strategic reserve whereby something, a sort of a citizens' army almost of their own people, within their own people, to draw upon in the event of a war. Now, on continental Europe, the risk against them is far higher than in Britain. Most of these countries actually border Russia. In the Baltics, they are quite literally bordered, and on top of that, have been threatened by Russia in the past. So them building up their forces is absolutely wise. Now, we should also be having the same discussion in Britain because our armed forces are absolutely horrendously underfunded. They've been degraded over many, many years, and we just don't have the numbers to be a credible force anymore.
I mean, what should we be looking at in the United Kingdom? Because there's a couple of approaches to this. There is the Finnish approach, which is compulsory national service, or let's say France, who seem to be going in that direction, but they are also talking about doubling the number of reservists. And there is also the route of making sure you've got a reserve force. I myself am applying to be a reservist as it happens. What route do you think Britain should go down? Because there's a lot of people who are beginning to say, do you know what, national service could be a bit of a cure-all, where we've got a lot of young people who seem to lack drive, who seem to lack motivation, who seem to potentially lack patriotism or a sense of belonging, who might be a little bit wide of girth and loose on morals, might actually benefit from having a year of military-style training? Or is it that actually that is an outmoded concept, and the better thing we can do is look at men and women out there who want to serve their country, who are not doing it right now, who work in many different walks of life, but can give up a certain amount of days every year to do training and be ready in case a crisis happens?
Well, I would 100% support the idea of a conscripted force. As you say, I do think it would do a world of good to British society, which has been fractured as of late, to say the least. I think the idea of giving young people goals in life, giving them a discipline and learning new trades and all the rest of it will be a great thing. But that being said, you've got to listen to the professional army and what they want. I actually err on the side of saying, OK, we don't necessarily want conscription in the UK. That maybe is an outdated model. But the idea of a citizens' army was put forward a few years ago about the idea of people just registering, having a better sort of understanding of who would join the British Army and how we would train them on scale. So basically putting in the infrastructure whereby we could, if called upon, say, okay, well, we know that we can get X amount of people into the army, 100,000, let's say, in a year. We need the ability to train them, to form new brigades, and actually create the mass that the British Army needs in a relatively short space of time. As I said, conscription in the old style is not necessarily the right style. It's coming up with new ideas, fresh ideas that will actually help us build mass.
It seems to me, actually, that the idea of promoting and boosting reservists is a halfway house. It's almost sort of like the gateway drug to later on having national service. This idea that you encourage people voluntarily who might want the camaraderie, who might want to feel like they're serving their country, who might appreciate actually doing something radically different at the weekend, meeting different people, learning new skills, and knowing that, you know, cometh the hour, they can stand up and defend this country. Setting an example then to a younger generation before we say to them, look, come on, you've got to do this. Because I do wonder, especially when you look around, say, London, for instance, how many of these kids with their hoods up, going around on line bikes, nicking mobile phones, you'd be able to get doing press-ups and, you know, drills on a military base, and whether that's a good idea.
Well, as I said, I think it would be a good idea, and I think we mustn't underestimate young people. I think that, and we shouldn't underestimate the amount of people in the country who are patriotic, genuinely so, and would volunteer if a national crisis were to emerge. Now, I wouldn't. One thing about Britain is we are a maritime nation, and we don't have the same problems as continental Europe. And as far as I'm concerned, having the ability to build mass is important, and we should have a strategic reserve, by the way, of vehicles and weapons to actually arm this force. There's no point having 100,000 men and women volunteer to join the British Army only not to get the right kit when the time comes. But instead, what we should really be doing is investing in strategic assets, expensive assets, particularly in, let's say, the Royal Navy, the ability to deploy troops abroad and all the infrastructure that's needed there, in our aircraft as well, things that we can't build in a year. Because we can train a military force in a year, but what we can't do is build a substantial number of ships or aeroplanes. So investing in the right areas in the Royal Navy and the RAF is absolutely vital. And then making sure that the British Army, we recognise that the British Army really is the first wave of a substantial war in Europe. The first sort of 72,000 people would deploy, and then we would need another 72,000 to follow on shortly afterwards. So it's having that ability to draw that mass together, train it properly, equip it properly, and then get it to the front line.
Talking about conscription, it's something that Vladimir Putin is looking at very closely, because he has come out and said he is going to fight or ready to fight until the last Ukrainian dies. This is amidst the idea that there can be a peace plan drawn up between Ukraine and Russia. The very first iteration of that appeared to be basically written by the Kremlin and loosely translated. Now Ukraine has come back with theirs. But it's very clear that Putin is not ready to back down. You can build as many golden bridges as you want. He wants to come away from this with the spoils of war. What approach should the West take?
Well, we need to recognise the threat here. Vladimir Putin has already received defeat. His sort of Maximus demands now are very different to the ones that he wanted back in 2022. He wanted all of Ukraine. And not only did he want all of Ukraine, I wouldn't have been surprised if Russian troops hadn't kept on going into Moldova. As soon as Ukraine had been defeated, they would have gone into Transnistria, a breakaway republic of Moldova. Moldova is not part of NATO. It's not part of the EU. It's the poorest country in Europe. And it is ripe. It is currently going through some terrible, terrible internal politics, all magnified by Russian interference. So that very much the target for Vladimir Putin was not just Ukraine. And he's also got his eyes on the Baltics. There was a call between David Cameron, the former Prime Minister, and the Kazakhstani foreign minister, I believe, that was released by the Russians, where the Kazakhstanis quite literally said to him that after Ukraine, we could have been next. They are very much afraid, and most of the countries around Russia are very much afraid of a resurgent Russia, of an aggressive Russia, one that wants to, as Vladimir Putin has said in the past, rebuild the Soviet Union. So we must first recognize that threat and then say to ourselves, well, we can't just hide behind Europe. We can't just rely on Vladimir Putin's goodwill not to push the boundaries even further than he has. We have to start investing in ourselves. We have to take this seriously, or else much bigger problems will come down further down the line.
Mesa, thank you ever so much. Like I said, it's always an honour to speak to you. I do admire you greatly. That's Mesa Gifford, former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine. He used to have a top job in the city, I believe, and then decided to give it all up to go fight ISIS. And then as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, he's like, right, I know where the action's at. I'm going in there to do the right thing. You don't get many men of that mettle, do you? But interesting, it seems to me that what Mesa was suggesting is actually, on some level, the West's strategy is working, which is backing Ukraine, arming Ukraine, has held Putin back. It's at least created a bit of a dam, and he's not been able to make the gains that perhaps otherwise he hoped he may have been able to. Where does that leave us going forward? Well, a lot of this, of course, rests in Mr. Trump's hands. OK, let's do some messages now before we go to the break to then begin our second hour. Good morning, Alex. How dare they destroy our great historic country and culture? Who does this dreadful Labour Party think they are? Dave from Hampshire. It was interesting. I don't know what you thought about getting the completely different, calm perspective of Sir Vince Cable, who said, do you know what? It isn't as bad as you think. We're going to have to get used to it, and actually it will be all right in the end. Compared to my sort of ranting, screaming abdabs at the top of the programme, it was sort of light and day, wasn't it? Alex, you speak for us all. Don't ever stop. The country has been cowed into weakness. Our men are departing in droves. Only we women must pull this country around. But who else will come to our aid? That's Yvonne in Solihull. Well, stay with me. I've got 2 more hours to go, and after the break, the brilliant Trevor Kavanagh joins me.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. I'm sitting in advert break I'm messaging the BBC saying, your headlines are wrong. They keep saying that there's a Brexit Party MEP being investigated. And I'm like, he wasn't. He was a UKIP MEP. Blimmin' look at me. I'm like Ofcom in my spare time. Anyway, the thing is, facts matter, don't they? And this is what I have been trying to say when it comes to the immigration debate. And the brilliant Tony Smith, former head of UK Border Force, was able to drill down into the statistics. It's interesting then getting Vince Cable saying, oh, well, you know, all of a sudden net migration has gone right down and people are moaning about it, when before, when it was really high, people moaned about that too. What do they want? And I said, yes, but it depends. Net migration is a sort of meaningless top line. What you have to do is drill down and look at the bigger picture underneath it. And when we've had net migration that's been really high, it's because we've been having a gross figure of about 1 million people coming into the country and then 100,000 people leaving. What we now have is still a gross figure of eye-watering amounts of people coming into the country. I think it's around 800,000, but 600,000 leaving. And among those people leaving are not just people going back from whence they came, but a substantial, unprecedented number of Britons, particularly young Britons, 18 to 35-year-olds, who are the future of this workforce, who have gone to warmer climes, peaceful climes, places that don't tax them as much, places where they might feel like they belong and can have a better life. And so that is a very different picture when you then drill down and you find out that of those people who have come into the country, almost 400,000, so 383,000, so almost half of those have come from non-EU countries, and of those people, only 14% are working. 14. That means 86% of 383,000, and someone out there who's got a better mathematical brain than I might be able to tell me what that number would be, are essentially now dependent upon the state. They're either children or students or dependents who aren't working, so they are not contributors. They're net benefactors. They are essentially more mouths to feed around the table. And so when you're losing workforce and you've got even more people you've got to pop up, then actually that net migration figure, yes, it might have come down, but actually it is even worse. It is even more doom-laden. So this is where facts do matter. But also what matters is perspective on this, because I think Vince Cable's a wonderful man. I respect him incredibly, and I actually really enjoyed having a completely different viewpoint to my own, and someone who just said, it's okay. Actually, as a society, we're becoming more open. Most developed world countries are multi-ethnic. They're multi-religious. That's just the way of the 21st century, and actually a lot of people in the country are quite relaxed about it. And then I said to him, but hold on. What about the polling? What about the rise in populism? What about you listening out there? What about me? I'm not relaxed about it. I'm not relaxed about it one iota. I find it very difficult to sit there, put on the rose-tinted glasses, look at the sweeping civilisational change, all the while underpinned by a deeply unfair budget, which once again is expecting me, who asks for nothing of this state and has worked since the age of 14, to dig a bit deeper, to carry a bit more, to be a bit more generous to people who, quite frankly, don't, in my mind, have a right to ask that of me. Because that is what is going on here. Why does somebody from, I don't know, Somalia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, you name it, where, Nigeria, it's not about where, but why does somebody from another country come here and indirectly, via the form of the prism of the government, say, hey, Alex, you work lots of hours every week, you get on a train, you do a 2-hour door-to-door round commute, you don't have kids, you probably can't afford to have them anyway, you've only just been able to buy a house at the age of 41. Can you help, because I want to live in your country and have babies? Because that is essentially how I feel. And so I don't care if there are people out there who think the toothless, snaggletooth weirdo Zach Polanski is some sort of left-wing hero and that this is the right thing to do. If I hear one more blooming Labour politician say, well, it's the right thing to do, I think I might throw something, because I am fed up with being proselytised to by people who have no moral backbone and then be made to feel bad because I believe that a nation state is almost like an insurance system where people invest in it, so they feel part of it, they belong to it, they would fight for it, they contribute to it, and then they all look after one another. That, to me, is actual charity, not saying to some rando from somewhere else, do you want to come, have a house, have some babies? Good old Alex there's going to look after you. Ain't that right, Alex? So I got myself wound up again. The calming presence of Vince Cable has left the building, unfortunately. He was like having Valium. Let's speak now to someone who is like, I don't know what it's going to be like. Which drug of choice is Trevor Kavanagh going to be today? I cannot wait to find out. Here he is, former political editor of The Sun. I have a feeling, Trevor, if you had a sort of spectrum of Vince Cable on one end and Alex Phillips on the other, I might find you down at my side of it.
I did enjoy that, I must say, Alex. It was very enjoyable. And I agree with every word of it. And I think it will be agreed with by 70% of the population. They're absolutely sick of the immigration figures, the welfare figures. I mean, we had a story in The Sun today about all of these several quoted and photographed young women who were having children. They'd had 2 or 3 already and were planning to have a lot more, even though they weren't working or supporting themselves. And it was going to get them an income from universal credit and child benefit of something like $30,000 a year. Well, I mean, that's the sort of tax that what are now the standard rate or average taxpayer is paying every year to support one single parent. So if you're caught by the Rachel Reeves budget and you're earning around $70,000 a year, which isn't a lot, certainly not in big cities, you'll be paying almost as much as those universal credit single mums who have no intention of working will be living on at your expense.
I mean, this is the thing, actually. If they've got the house and then they're getting this money on top of it, then they've probably got, if they've got 30 grand a year of disposable income, that's about as much as someone on a £100,000 paycheck. It's a ridiculous amount of money to be able to go and freely spend on what you want without having to do anything to qualify having it. But I think the more visceral element to all of this, and I've not been able to fully get an accurate statistic, but what I have done is used AI, doesn't everyone these days, to scour through publicly available statistics to make an estimation of how many families with more than 2 children are British families, are British-born families. And good old Grok, when I asked it to go through census data, ONS figures, etc., said, well, look, everything I've sliced and diced and calculated, it would seem to me that the majority of families who have more than 2 children have at least one foreign-born parent, and estimated that 70% of people with large families actually are not British born and bred, if you will. And without turning this into a racialised question, but a question more about fairness, I think that is the thing that sticks in the core of many British families more than anything else. The idea that there are people who have no relationship with this country, whose ancestors didn't shed blood, sweat and tears to build it, who have come over here and are now benefiting from being able to have as many children as they would like to have, without having to do anything to qualify deserving it.
Yes, and I think that Rachel Reeves has unwittingly, or maybe even deliberately and knowingly, exposed a nerve with the British public on this, because I think this has now become the issue of the day. It represents everything that's wrong with this society economically and socially at the present. The invasion by huge numbers of migrants, many of them illegal, the fact that many of them arrive and many of them have large families and many of whom don't work. I think that all of those people who for decades, in fact forever, as long as I've been covering politics and trade union issues, has infuriated those workers who actually do get up out of bed in the morning early and do a full day's work and return and find that the curtains that were drawn on the house opposite where someone was living on benefits are still drawn because they haven't got out of bed. I mean, that was something that was said to me by a leader of the engineering union 30 years ago. So this is not a new thing, but it suddenly has become a huge thing. And I think, you're looking now at those pictures of people coming across in boats. Well, your point earlier about the rising numbers of immigrants, legal and illegal, while the number of people who leave the country is increasing. So the statistics are completely misleading. It reminds me of Simon Cowell, who's been telling us all about how he's had a blood rinse. So the old blood is flushed out of the system and the new blood is sweeping back in. And this is a sort of representation of what we're seeing to British society.
The difficult and most dangerous part of all of this is we're not allowed to talk about it. And yet there are certainly some people of certain cultures who have an ideology that they don't belong to a nation, they belong to their own people, let's call it the Ummah, and that also that they aren't the ones who should be working, that other people should work, and actually they're the people who should profit from it. And I'm not saying that everybody who is of a particular religion holds that mindset, but it is certainly in existence within certain communities. And we're not allowed to talk about that. We have to believe that everybody is pure as the driven snow, whose moral compass is exactly the same as ours, who has all the best intentions in the world, and that therefore, if they're having large families and can't pay for them, it's because of hardship, it's because of bereavement or some unforeseen incident that has smited them down, and that's why, morally, we have to be there to have their backs. And then at the same time, you have a left wing who will point to countries in the developing world where we're seeing so many people come from now, 383,000, and say, well, it's Britain's fault. We colonised those countries and then we invented borders. We came up with land masses and said, oh, look, we're going to call this Kenya. And just randomly and wantonly bundled a load of tribes together who didn't have anything in common. And guess what? They can't get their act together, which is why the country is still in the doldrums economically. And I kind of think to myself, if leftists can say, oh, well, the great sort of invented border experiment of the British colonisers is the reason why these countries are now poor, why on earth do they think the same social experiment is going to work in the UK?
Well, I think you've again touched on a number of nerves here. I mean, I remember vividly that during the period when we were beginning to see the first indications that a very large number of people from Muslim countries were coming to Europe, not just to Britain, that it was deemed, and I remember reading that a Muslim imam had said that it was the duty of migrants to use the welfare state to weaken the economy of the countries, the host countries. Now, that was possibly an extreme comment, but it did happen and it was said. And I think that we simply do not understand, or will not understand, at least the Labour government refuses to understand, that the British public will not put up with this. And they're unpopular, this government, at the moment already. Very unpopular. And I simply cannot see how this is going to get them off the bottom of the opinion polls. It's a form of suicide. This is like a sort of socialist economic sabotage unit being released on UK PLC with the intention of destroying prosperity and jobs and employment.
What is so fascinating is that you see it, I see it, every single listener right now, I'm certain, will see it. Across the Western world, across Europe, voters are seeing it and saying we need to have radical change and it's got to happen yesterday. But what is quite remarkable is the fact that America sees it, and America really cares, because it's been reported today in the Times that US diplomats have been told to collect data on human rights abuses committed by migrants in host countries. A senior US State Department official said British people had voted for a form of mass immigration and have been repeatedly let down. The British government in particular, time and time again, we've seen governments say they're going to take action to solve the mass migration crisis, and time again, despite the people continuously voting for a resolution, nothing has really happened. And they're talking about the sexual assaults and aggravated attacks, particularly on women and girls, by people of the migration background, especially an Islamic background. America's looking at Europe and going, blimmin' heck, they're walking themselves to the edge of the cliff and they're going to throw themselves off it. Perhaps we're going to have to step in and do something. I mean, to me, that really does encapsulate quite how precarious the situation we're in.
Well, this is quite a sensational and yet refreshing statement from officials within the White House administration. it is a statement of the bleeding obvious, isn't it? Something that most of the population of this country have been fully aware of. They don't need to be told by America, but they're very grateful probably for it being pointed out. They've been aware of this for the last 20 years. And the child rape gangs that have been proliferating through communities in this country have been operating for most of those 20 years. And the fact of the matter has been known to the authorities, to the council officials, to the police, and to the politicians, particularly Labour politicians. And we have been told to shut up and mind our own business because any suggestion that this is going on is racist and fascist. And this is the typical knee-jerk reaction of the Labour Party then and now in government today to smear anybody who dares to tell the truth.
I want to ask you about something that's emerged from an interview of Kemi Badenoch with Nick Robinson on his podcast, where talking about the welfare state through the prism of religion. She's quoted St Paul's advice to Timothy in the Bible, love the Bible, best book ever written, saying anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith. And Nick Robinson said to her, does she mean that welfare spending was un-Christian? And she said, you can argue that. Now, look, my belief is very simple. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Politics is here, religion's here. But one thing I do get from this, derivates from this, and it's really stuck in my craw over the last few weeks, is I keep hearing Labour politician after Labour politician using this buzz phrase, which is, it's the right thing to do. Oh, we've scrapped the two-child benefits cap. It's the right thing to do. We're going to make sure everyone has workers' rights from day dot, although there's been a U-turn on that. It's the right thing to do. It's this sort of proselytising, neo-religious morality of the left, which, to me, very often flies in the face of the traditional values of this country, which was free will, moral agency and responsibility underpinned by a shared ethic and culture. What do you think of what Kemi Badenoch has had to say?
Well, I think that religion, the best parts of religion, like the Ten Commandments and this quote from, I think it was St. Paul to Timothy, that you should look after your own family. Basically, there's common sense. I think that they chime with the views of most responsible people and families and so on. But what we are not fully appreciating is the fact that for socialism and for socialists, including this socialist government, families are a threat to the state because they represent a voice that is independent, impartial, and as I say, representing common sense. They don't want people to live on their own resources. They want them to be beholden to the state handouts. These child breakfast clubs may be very welcome, but what it is, it's making families dependent upon the state for fundamental resources like food at the table. And this is allegedly what we're having to deal with because of mass poverty in this country at a time when we are richer than and healthier than at any time in the history of the world. But socialism doesn't believe in that. It believes in manipulating the people. And that's what's happening here. This budget is the manifest proof of that.
Before I let you go, Trevor, I want to ask you about poverty in this country, or what is often called relative poverty. And I think the word relative is key in all of this. Because when I imagine poverty, as somebody who's lived in sub-Saharan Africa, I imagine people who really are facing food shortages, who don't have electricity, who don't have clean water, who don't have clothes. And when I think of poverty in the United Kingdom, yes, there might be people saying, how can I feed the family this week? But by and large, I think it's sort of often cast in terms of, well, they can't afford a new television set. Am I being uncharitable here? Do we really have a situation in various communities in the United Kingdom where people's lives are at risk because they cannot buy food and they cannot clothe their kids? Or is it more about the fact that they can't afford a holiday and other people can?
Well, it is exactly that, Alex. You put your finger on the point. And if Frank Field, the remarkable Labour MP who died last year, were around today, he was the founder and the leader of the low pay unit, and he was always on the side of working people on low incomes. But he never believed in handouts. He believed in the old proverb about you don't help a person by giving them a meal, you help them by giving them a fishing rod so they can catch fish and feed themselves. So this is the point. Relative poverty means that if the average person has all of the modern conveniences of society, plasma screen, television as a second car, a holiday abroad, and so on, that everybody should be given a chance to have that too. And it isn't right, is it? If you haven't actually earned it, those people who are able to have those facilities have almost invariably worked for them. They deserve them. They've earned them. They're just the same way as they've earned their pensions and earned their keep. You don't just hand people something for nothing in return for sitting on their backsides at home and taking money off the taxpayers who are actually working.
Oh, Trevor, I always love catching up with you. You are utterly brilliant. It makes me feel like I'm still in the company of sane people on this planet. The brilliant Trevor Cavan, the former political editor of The Sun. Do you know, I was thinking then, my late grandma, Iris, God, she was amazing. She was amazing. In the Second World War, she sewed wings on aeroplanes. She had the loudest laugh. Everyone loved her, but she was a tough old bird. But she worked multiple jobs all her life. You know, she had 2 kids, but she worked, during the daytime and then in the evening, switching from one job to the other just to make sure her family had the bare basics. And you know what? I don't think she even made it to Scotland. She might have gone to Wales at some point, but she never got a holiday. Ever. Maybe 1 week every year she might be able to go down to Cornwall, but otherwise she had a house full of laughter, neighbours who loved her. You know, there was always a shepherd's pie on the table. She knew how to make food go a long way. That generation did. And now you've got a lot of people going, oh, I need a smartphone. I can't watch Netflix. I can't afford to pay my subscription. Like, sorry? Wait. Go make your own entertainment. I mean, I don't get it. It's this relative poverty. That is the word you've got to look out for. Relative poverty. Because really, I'm not saying that there aren't people struggling. Of course there are, okay? Not when I was growing up, we didn't always get to have family holidays, and I spent too much time wearing my brother's clothes. My mum tells me off for saying that. But it's true, Mum. I have the photo evidence. But the thing is this, you know, we had such a happy upbringing. We were brilliantly educated around the dining table. We didn't need private tutors. My mum read books to me every night. You know, we had a strong, coherent family, which is why I managed to get to where I am in life. You don't need all the money in the world to be able to provide a strong and stable family unit. And so this is where you've got to look out for that word relative. Relative to what, exactly? All right, so we're going to take a break now. I'd love to hear from you. 03444 99 1000 is the number to call. Please register your interest, and the lovely Abby will take your call and hopefully patch you through to the studio to have a chat with me in front of everybody else. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to text. Write the word talk before you text. I'm back just after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. It is time to take some calls. Let's speak first of all to Vernon, who is in Staffordshire. Hi there, Vernon.
Alex, good morning to you. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, actually, yeah. I mean, I have my rants, I have my raves, and then it's nice, actually. You get it out, and you do actually feel a bit better after it. So this is my therapy, basically.
Well, you're my therapy. I'm driving back from Hamburg, Alex.
Oh, nice. You're on the Autobahn.
Yesterday. I am, yes. I'm on the Autobahn. I'm not struggling. I'm an entrepreneur, a wealth creator, driving back to Blighty, thinking, why do I bother? So I'm coming back to England on Monday, and I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with my business. I'm fortunate. I can do many things. I'll always overcome the morons in Westminster who've never run a business. I'm always 3 or 4 steps ahead of them. But Vince Cable you had on,
yeah,
a beautiful human,
he is
thoroughly decent man,
lovely man,
but clueless. Clueless with a capital C.
I tell you what it is, Vern. There are two types of ways of existing in the United Kingdom. And I was saying to Vince, I now live in Lib Dem heartlands in Gloucestershire. And I can totally see why the good burghers of my town and village are minded to vote Lib Dem, because it's like the Elysian Fields. It's an ideal world. All the things that we talk about here just don't apply there. They're completely immune to all of it. You don't have mass immigration. There's not a single mosque in sight. You'd have to double take if you saw somebody in a burqa. You'd probably collapse with surprise. Everyone's fairly well heeled. Everyone owns their own home. We're surrounded by green fields, beautiful pubs with open fires, people walking their doggies, wearing their barber jackets. And so you live there and you kind of think, yeah, immigration's lush, isn't it? It's really nice, because when I go into Gloucester, for example, I can get all these exotic vegetables. And do you know, it's funny, isn't it? The reductive argument whenever you bring about immigration, left-wing always go, but what about the restaurants? What about the blimmin' restaurants? I mean, for crying out loud. But then you have people, right, who live in parts of the country who suddenly don't know any of their neighbours, who see the wear and tear on their streets, who see this sort of social disintegration, and they have that sense of unfairness because they feel like their economics are being stretched. They can see their money leaving their bank accounts via taxation every single month and going to people who aren't lifting a finger. And so I really think that, you know, there are both parallel truths that can coexist at the same time. And I think that sort of Vince Cable and Alex Phillips are those parallel truths.
Alex, my daughter is 12 years of age, and her horrible father won't allow her to catch the school bus. You know why? Because it's not safe. I live in a leafy part of Staffordshire, 12 miles from the Abyss, which is Stoke-on-Trent, which is just one of the worst places in the world. The Germans missed it, unfortunately. It deserved to be flattened. It's a horrible place. It's got beautiful people, but it's overrun now. We have lots of guests that are illegal from this country. I just want to analyse some statistics. So, immigration that's approved, approximately 320 20,000 people, and only 14% of that 320,000
are working.
people are
Yeah.
going to work.
Well, it's not sustainable. Like I said, if I were to sum up everything that goes on today, immigration, the budget, even the ridiculous previously proposed first day workers' rights, the word is unfair. It's just so unfair. Vernon, thank you so much for calling me. I really appreciate that. Paul Stoke-on-Trent. Surely it can't be the worst place in the world. Let's speak now to AJ. He's from Gwynedd in Wales. Bore da.
Bore da, but I'm not in Gwynedd. I'm in my winter home in Telford.
Your winter home in Telford?
Yeah.
I love the idea that you've got, a summer house in Gwynedd and a winter home in Telford, of all places. What a strange way to apportion your life. Right, talk to me, AJ. What's on your mind?
OK, these immigrants. Now then, I take home per month £1,071 per month. The average rate for a 35-hour week on minimum wage is 1,500. And yet, I can't get a doctor's appointment. I have to see a nurse. I can't have my ears tested because I got to pay £60 to have them cleaned out. I can't have glasses because I've got to pay for them. And God forbid, if I wanted to go out, because I'd have to pay a taxi from where I am, and yet they get 3 meals a day. They get spending money. They get new clothes. If I want new clothes, I have to go to Vinted and buy second-hand. What's going on in this world when a pensioner at 71 is living under minimum wage?
I totally agree with you, and people who have worked hard all their lives, and it isn't fair. Like I said, what characterises everything going on in the United Kingdom today is this sense that nothing is remotely fair. AJ, I hear you. I don't know what to say. I have the utmost sympathy. It shouldn't be this way. That was AJ in Telford, in his winter home. I quite like that. Anyway, right, we're going to take a short break now. When I come back, just before I go to break, I read something out of the corner of my eye, a message here, and I'm going to make sure that I get through more of these. But this one is really interesting, from Trevor in Harrow. There's an old saying that those in third class on the Titanic knew it was sinking way before those sipping champagne in first class. I think it's the perfect metaphor for what is happening now. I think so too. Right, OK, we're going to take a quick break. Now, when we come back... Oh, Calamity Lammy, eh? Oh, blimmin' heck. Now he's a Justice Minister. It's a matter of time before he decided to do something that sort of, earned him a second bozo certificate to hang on the wall of his office. And he's decided that, oh, no, forget this whole idea that ECHR got to stay in that international law. But then let's just get rid of juries instead. Seriously? Seriously, son, you're going to go rip up the Magna Carta, are you now? Blimmin' heck. We're going to be discussing this with the brilliant Francis Hoare, a public law barrister, after the break.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
You know, when you look at things that have underpinned our democracy, our civilization, for the best part of, well, a millennia, really. Part of that is jury trials. The idea that you cannot have one person with executive power in the form of a judge making unilateral sweeping decisions as to somebody's fate. It is far better if there is a jury of their peers, man and woman, anonymously selected from the general public to sit, discuss, to weigh up, to bring forward and bring to bear perhaps their own prejudices and perspectives, because we all have them, regardless of whether we wish to be subject to them or not. It is the human condition, which is why the concept of having a jury has been so important and a great market in our judicial system for centuries and centuries and centuries. Now, we know there's a backlog, and that is a terrible thing. It is terrible that people who have murdered, raped, pillaged, whatever it may be, are not facing justice for years in some cases, by which point you have to concern yourself whether witness statements are viable, whether or not there can be a fair trial. And so we have to find a way to cut that back. But again, on the other side, if we look at, let's say, particularly deportation rulings, which are often taken by an independent individual judge, usually a human rights judge, well, very often you think, where did he get his wacko conclusions from? Chicken nuggets, this, my cousin, I'm a role model to my cousin despite being a rapist pedo. I mean, what the hell? You suddenly realise that these people have their own ideology and they can't seem to subtract themselves from it when they decide to read the law and interpret the law in a particular fashion. So surely we've got to maintain the judicial system with juries, because what are we becoming if we don't? What, like a banana republic? Let's speak now to Francis Hoare, a public law barrister, for his perspective on this. Now, it's one of those things that snuck out, didn't it? And all the doom and gloom of everything else going on, all the budget, immigration statistics. Oh, yeah, we're just going to get rid of juries, by the way. It's like, what? What? That was my reaction. What was yours?
Well, we now learn, I think it was said at the time that this was a leak, and it's always suspicious when there's a leak like this because one wonders whether it was to test opinion. And now there are suggestions. I think Guido Fawkes made that suggestion this morning that this might not be implemented at all. But the real problem with this is that way that the government is going about it. Well, I mean, the real problem is the suggestion itself. But before we get to that, how is it appropriate for the government simply to announce a policy based, it seems, upon the conclusions of a judge, Lord Justice Leveson, who didn't actually go as far as this anyway? And of course, Lord Justice Leveson has, I would say, a checkered career as a public inquiry judge, bearing in mind what I think many people consider to be his extremely dangerous conclusions in the Leveson inquiry. But putting that to one side, that is not an appropriate way to go about dismantling, and that is what it would do, a right that has been perhaps the earliest statutory right that we have in this country. And it was grossly insulting for both Lord Justice Leveson and apparently Lammy to have suggested that this somehow isn't a right because it's not within the European Convention of Human Rights, which is an international charter that's less than 80 years old. It is, as I say, the oldest statutory right in this country. It's one of the only four provisions of the Magna Carta that are left, and the Magna Carta prefigured statute at all because it prefigured the emergence of Parliament as we know it now in the 13th century, and in fact jury trial goes before that. So it couldn't be more of an ancient right. It isn't used now for civil cases other than very occasionally for actions against the police and defamation, but it is essential I agree that when accused of a serious offence, not all offences, but a serious offence, one person does not have that power for the obvious reason that there is always a risk that that one person may have an undue pressure from the state. That's not to say that judges don't, by and large, do an excellent job, and they do. Obviously, you've drawn out some exceptions from that, but by and large, judges of criminal cases are experienced and measured and do a very difficult and hard job. But they don't want, by and large, also to be judges of fact in these criminal cases. They have a role to be the judges of the law, and that's a distinction that has worked extremely well.
One thing that concerns me is the judicial system in this country is increasingly, I think, under attack, or at least facing criticism about its politicisation. And when we talk about there being a singular judge presiding over a case, there is also the matter of the interpretation of the law and how much one's own attitudes and views of the world can impact upon that interpretation. And I think about, for instance, when you see judges, we come across rulings in newspapers where judges said about a particular young person, well, you know, because he was a young black kid brought up on this housing estate, the fact he's gone and nicked 1,000 mobile phones this year, it needs to be taken into account that, you know, where he comes from. And you think, well, surely that isn't a sane way of approaching justice. Similarly, the ECHR and the way that we interpret it, and then other countries don't, the human rights barristers, whether it be in the matrix chambers or whatnot, who seem to almost become left-wing activists, that to me in itself is something I wasn't aware. Maybe this has always been the case, but I wasn't aware of there being this idea that many people in the judicial system are sort of, you know, bought up socialists who are sort of using the profession to impose upon the rest of us their view of the world. I mean, do you think that's a fair interpretation? Has there been this shift in the judicial system towards sort of a left-wing politicisation? Or is that just sort of, you know, I sit there and read scurrilous headlines in the Daily Mail too much?
A mixture. I think it's right to say that there's an increasing amount of judges who perhaps come from the left, and that's perhaps a reflection of the way the profession has developed and changed. I think that's probably true. I also think, as I said, that my experience of the judiciary is that by and large they do an excellent job. There are obviously bad apples in any profession, but they do it conscientiously. And of course, one thing one should remember is that the extent to which they give credence to various considerations in sentences, sometimes taken wholly out of context, it has to be said in reports like that, is partly a reflection, or is largely a reflection of the fact that they have to, due to the guidelines that have become tram lines rather than guidelines, although they're not supposed to be, removing judicial discretion. And I think when you give a professional discretion, they tend to make better decisions than they do if they are hidebound by this guidance. I think another point to get across is, maybe you're going to ask me about this separately, but I think it is important to get across how utterly fallacious this point about delays is. That the government is prepared to spend £15 billion more on welfare, which should be cut severely because it's totally out of control. They announced an expenditure increase of approximately that, if not more, to the NHS before negotiating pay packets, which meant that all of that immediately went on pay. That was reckless in the extreme, and yet they cut to the bone. This government, the last government, the Blair government, not so much the government before this rot started, they have cut to the bone legal aid, they've cut to the bone judicial sitting times. I have friends who sit as part-time judges. Their days that they can sit have been reduced, even though they'd be quite happy to sit more. There are many recorders, and they could be part-time circuit judges who sit in Crown Courts. There are many more who could sit, and those who sit could sit for much longer. There is absolutely no reason for this delay other than the fact that the government puts the second duty of the state after the defence of the realm, which is the preservation of justice, so incredibly low, so low that it could appoint somebody as stupid, frankly, as David Lammy to be Justice Secretary, which is, I think, an insult to the profession that he is in one of the most ancient offices of state of Lord Chancellor. It's utterly insulting to have somebody as stupid as him in that position, and I don't use that word lightly.
I loved that. Francis Hall, round of applause for that man. Oh, yes. Anyone just has to watch David Lammy on Mastermind to realise that he doesn't have one. Francis Hall, thank you ever so much, especially for that impassioned edition about the appointment of David Lammy to one of the most historic and important and critical positions in government. OK, we're going to take an advert break now, but when we come back, we are going to be joined by Chief Bab, Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and pollster, to get a sort of temperature of how people have reacted to the budget. Has that had an impact on polling? Let's find out after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, I don't know about you, but I am in agreement with those people who saw Kemi Badenoch rip a new one into Rachel Reeves in the PMQs ahead of the budget. or was it after the budget? Either way. And I kind of thought, you go, girl. There was some sort of moments in that were absolutely golden. And it's interesting, isn't it? Everyone got fed up with the Conservative Party. You should be nowhere near power. You've abrogated your duty for far too long now. We don't trust you at all to be anywhere near the government. And yet, then you get the Labour Party and you're like, blimmin' heck, I'm missing that Sunak right now. There's nothing wrong with Sunak, to be honest. I wish he hadn't called that snap election. But there you have it. Am I alone in this, or has that actually seen an uptick in support for the Conservative Party? How are Reform faring? Is all of the what did he say in the playground at school having an impact? Let's speak now to the brilliant pollster, Conservative peer, and I'd like to call him as well because he's a Bristolian, the chief babber, Lord Robert Hayward. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm in good form.
Good, I'm pleased to hear it. Right, so let's look at the budget first of all. How many people in the country thought that this was a good budget?
We always have to be very careful about opinion polls that are snap, immediate reaction, but it's fair to say that the polls, 3% of people polled yesterday said they felt they'd be better off. There are other polls which show that no people think the economy is in a good state, which again is unique in opinion polling. I cannot recall any poll ever showing 0 on a figure like that. So it's fair to say that the population is pretty despondent, was already before the budget, but even more so after the budget.
Is this having effects on the party polling? Because for a long time we have seen Reform sort of stay in the late 20s, sometimes early 30s. Vince Cable was saying to me earlier, well, it doesn't matter what they're polling, it's just immaterial. And I thought, well, when it goes on for more than a year, it kind of does matter. You are beginning to then see a trend. But underneath, there's been jostling and moving around. And it seems to me that at one point you had Reform leading the polls and Labour still in second place. Labour now seem to be bringing up the rear, and the Conservatives may be having some form of resurgence. Is that correct, do you think?
Yes, I think that's a fair analysis. Reform appear to have peaked. Now, it doesn't mean to say they won't go back to another peak, but they've shown a slight decline over the last few weeks. Labour have continued their disastrous drop to the extent that a poll that was conducted immediately after the budget put them in 4th place, Reform first, a long way ahead, but down on previous weeks. The Conservatives up a bit, then the Greens, which is significant, and then the Labour Party. The budget itself will not feed through to party support for a number of weeks. People take a while to change their views in relation to a brand. You touched on Kemi's, what everybody agrees was phenomenal performance on Wednesday afternoon, and it's likely that there will be more positive reaction to her more quickly than to the Tory party, which will take time.
Do we have any indication of whether this sort of sustained effort to portray Nigel Farage as some sort of terrorising racist at school, therefore he must be a wicked person now, has that been having an impact, do you think, or has it? Because my judgment would be that a lot of people are so sick to death of this sort of headline, they sort of take it all with a pinch of salt. But then there may be some people who think, gosh, now I know that about him, perhaps I've been wrong to say I would vote Reform.
I think it's improbable, both because it would take time for that to impact in the same way that other events, whether it's the budget or some good speech, take a while to impact on Kemi or Reform or whatever. The criticism of Nigel Farage in relation to what he did or said at school is unlikely to have any impact other than those who already disliked him intensely. Because after all said and done, I'm sure in your heart of hearts, and I certainly can admit to having done and said things which would mortify me now, X number of years on, whether it's at school or university or after university. We all grow up, and therefore to be honest, what Nigel Farage said at school will be discounted by the overwhelming majority. They'll judge on whether they like him now, not what he said some 40 or 50 years ago.
I mean, what is so strange to me is the fact that, The Guardian, the people who wrote this story, which sort of came from a guy who was at school with Nigel Farage, who's a theatre director, who also happens to do a lot of work for, yes, you guessed it, the BBC. The BBC then sort of led headlines on this a couple of days after the Guardian article and really went to town on it. And yet at the same time, I thought I'd do a little bit of research into how the BBC have covered other things that senior political figures have said. Wes Streeting's inadvisable tweets while he was still an MP, not covered. Zach Polanski and his boob hypnotism, not covered. And then I look at the polling of the Green Party and I smell a rat here. I think something's being manufactured. Is there something funny about the Green Party polling?
No, I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of people who voted for the Labour Party at the last election. They won't vote Conservative or Reform and are looking in despair at the Labour Party in terms of the way they are managing things and will go to somebody else. There's a lot of people, for example, who supported the Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn was leading it. And though that group of people, either those who are big backers of Jeremy Corbyn or alternatively just Labour supporters in despair who won't go elsewhere, and they are switching in large numbers to the Green Party.
Thank you ever so much, Lord Hayward. OK, we're going to leave it there for now, but don't go anywhere. I'm back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Alex with you today until 1 o'clock. This is the last hour of the programme. Thank you so much for your company. Numbers on the screen if you want to get involved and have a chit-chat with us, because in this hour we're going to be taking a lot of calls and reading out a lot of messages. So before I go over to the brilliantly misanthropic Tonka toy of terror, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, this is the number if you want to give me a call, register your interest to chat with me a bit later, 03444 99 1000. You can also use that number to send a WhatsApp message. Leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, 877 077 222 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you text. OK, now we've got our housekeeping out the way. Let's trash the joint, shall we, by inviting into the conversation Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Alex. Tonkatoy of terror. I like that.
I know, like pull you back and let you go. That's what I'm intending to do. Do you know, I'm going to give you something. I'm just going to give you a bit of information and then let's see how you react to it. So, when I was talking about the migration statistics with Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, at the very start of this programme, he broke down the figures for me. And yes, we know we have net migration of far lower than we've ever had, but when you actually read into what's gone on here, it ain't good. You've got over 100,000 18 to 35-year-olds leaving the country, you know, most of the workforce. And of those arriving, 383,000 are from non-EU countries, the developing world. The main countries, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. Of the 383,000 coming from the developing world, only 14% are working.
It's just Keir Starmer and this catastrophic government are just ruining this country. It's extraordinary. I mean, you talk about all those young people leaving the country, more than 100,000. Over the past year, altogether, something like nearly 300,000 people have emigrated, have left. And of course, the popular thing to say, well, these are all the millionaires, the people who can't take the taxes. No, no, no. Yes, it is very bad that we have the super rich leaving the country, the millionaires, the billionaires. They're not going to stick around because of the taxes. But what is worse is loads and loads and loads of people, especially young people, who are just medium earners, the kind of people who traditionally would have, taken their chances in Britain and worked their careers, looked forward to a prosperous future. They're just going. They're just leaving because there's no chance in this country. There's no prospects. It is just shocking what Starmer and his gormless government are doing to this country. And that budget on Wednesday, I mean, that was the sort of rancid cherry on the rotten cake. It was the end. It was literally the end. It's unbelievable. Did you see? I mean, when you see Starmer and Reeves, but particularly Starmer being interviewed after that budget, you know, you want to throw a brick at the screen. Beth Rigby, who I've had my doubts about lately, she interviewed him while he was with the faithful in rugby. So they hot foot straight from the budget speech to stick themselves in the middle of a load of manic Labour supporters. So it looks like they've achieved some kind of triumph. Now, Beth Rigby sort of put him on the spot and said, "You've broken all the promises. You and Rachel Reeves said when you came into power, sorry, but we can't do anything about the 2-child limit on benefits. That cap has to stay. We cannot afford anything more than that." She said, "You've gone back on that promise." And Beth got angry. You could see she was furious. She said, what do you have to say about that?" There he is. And he said, "Let me answer that question. I have always put at the middle of Labour policy child poverty. We have to lift children out of child poverty." He didn't answer the question. These people have broken every promise they made. The manifesto was just a bit of paper to them. It didn't mean anything. And that budget, as Andrew Neil quite rightly said, that was a watershed in British history. Yeah. It was when this country changed beyond recognition. We are now a welfare system with a country attached. We are you, me, everyone who's working, every small business, every big business. We exist now to fuel this massive welfare state, which by 2030 will be costing us a grotesque, obscene £427 billion a year. This is disgusting what they're doing to this country.
But I think what is even more toxic about all of this is, yes, we're becoming a sort of massive welfare state with a couple of people breaking their backs to pay for it attached to it, but it's a welfare state for the blimmin' world. It's not even a welfare state for the British. And that, to me, is the most egregious part.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you know, our among the many omni shambles going on, the asylum seeker crisis, the migrant crisis is out of control. It is just, it's a tragic sight to see. And as you say, what we're doing is we are letting, you know, hundreds of thousands, verging on the million migrants in every year, many of them legal, many of them illegal. They get here. I mean, what do we do with asylum seekers when they pitch up on our south coast illegally, having broken our laws, come across the channel, break our laws? What do we do? The first thing we say to them, here's £50 a week benefits. And then later on, they go on to qualify for a lot more. These people, you know, most of them never work. They come into this country, many of them illegally, others legally, and we just pay them benefits for the rest of their lives. What about these Afghanis, the Afghan resettlement scheme that the government kept a secret from us? There are 70,000 Afghan refugees and asylum seekers in this country right now. The ones who came on the resettlement scheme, the ones many of whom pretended collaborated with the British during the Afghan war, have been told they don't have to work for the rest of their life.
Oh, it's mad. A load of these people are going to be extremists. I'm not saying the majority, but a significant chunk of them. Look what's just happened in America, a decision they've taken there. And it's amazing, isn't it, that America's now asking their diplomats to report back on what Britain's up to, how badly they're treating us, because America's right. I actually feel with this government like I'm the victim of some sort of domestic abuse. It's like, one thing that's driving me mad, Kev, is when they say, they have the audacity to say, oh, we've lifted the two-child benefits cap because it's the right thing to do. That this moral superiority. And I feel like they've basically got Britain by its hair. It's holding it there, beating it up, going, bad Britain, nasty Britain, punishy Britain, disgusting Britain, evil Britain. This is for your own good, you horrible little country, you nasty piece of rubbish. That's how I feel I'm being treated by blimmin' Sir Keir Starmer and his cohort of Marxist mad people.
They don't like this country, that's for damn sure. And when you look at what Donald Trump is saying, if only we would react like this. I mean, they had, see, that Afghani migrant who gunned down those two poor National Guard soldiers, that poor 20-year-old girl died today. The other one, to be honest with you, is likely to die. So you've got two murders there by an Afghani migrant apparently shouting Allahu Akbar as he ran down the street with a gun. This guy came in on Joe Biden's Operation Allies Welcome scheme. He actually did work with the CIA and US Special Forces in Afghanistan, but it just shows, oh, they work with us, so let them all come in. We must let them in. Well, you know, I think that guy tells a story. We should be very worried about...
Kev, I mean, this is an area of my expertise, if you will. I researched this stuff inside out and back to front. And if you knew the sheer volume of people who are gaming the system, who are in cahoots with Al-Qaeda, who the Taliban are providing little letters that they can use to send to the border, who have come over to this country and are making up sleeper cells in every town and city because they want to actually maim us, destroy us, murder us, and all the rest of it. It is enough to give you nightmares. Again, something else that Sir Keir Starmer and the previous government, quite frankly, don't seem to give a flying anything about. It makes no sense to me, the way this country is being run. It's evil. You'll be pleased to know, I don't even know what this rubbish story, but it's broken that French maritime police, get this, say they will soon be able to carry out control and intervention operations at sea. The police get to police. And what are they going to do? Nothing.
Alex, they've been saying that for at least a year now. Oh, we will now, big deal, actually go into the sea, actually go ankle deep into the sea, the English Channel, to try and stop the dinghies at sea. Ridiculously, despite the £500 million we gave them, hitherto, they stopped their efforts, their alleged efforts to stop the migrants at the point where the sea hits the sand. So the migrants, traditionally, for ever since this has been going on, they stand ankle deep in the sea, in the ocean. in the English Channel, while the gendarmes stand on the sand looking at them, literally yards away. And they keep saying, yeah, well, we're going to actually now start going out to sea to actually stop them. Never seems to happen. And even if they do, trust me, they won't stop them. This asylum seeker crisis is ridiculous. And did you notice, I thought one of the key moments that went underreported in Rachel Reeves's budget speech from hell on Wednesday was that she's budgeted for £15 billion over the next 10 years to accommodate asylum seekers. So where is the ambition about solving the migrant crisis in that? There isn't. This government is budgeting for the asylum seeker crisis to go on forever and ever and ever. And what have we learned in the last day or so? That in fact, this government that keeps saying, we're going to really reduce the use of asylum seeker hotels. It's gone up. It's going up and up and up. That everything this government say you can almost guarantee is a lie. It's not true. At the moment, Keir Starmer's showing sort of slight bit of common sense, saying we've got to rip up Angela Rayner's mad workers' rights bill. We can't have people suing for unfair dismissal 3 hours after they started at a company, which is what she's proposing.
Oh, it's crazy. That workers' rights bill was just mental illness. It's like, I remember speaking to my hairdresser.
Mental illness.
Speaking to my hairdresser one day, he had a person who came to work for him, a young lady, as a hairdressing assistant, a salon assistant, who was from Albania. And she came to work, and so he gave her a job. And as soon as she had the job, she was like, I'm pregnant. I need somewhere to go and lie down. I can't come into work. I can't do this. Oh, I can't sweep the floor. I can't wash hair. I can't. And she took him to court for a tribunal. And the thing is, it ends up when you're an employer like that, you spend so much money on a lawyer that you think it's easier just to go, here's £2,000, go away. And so there are people like that who professionally game the system anyway. And the problem with the Labour Party is they've got this idea that, all these people are beatified, that they're wonderful, that they all have the best of intentions in the world, that nobody would dream of starting work and then basically taking the proverbial. Of course, that's what lots of people do. That this country is basically the constant victim of people taking the proverbial.
And they will lose. The thing about the workers' rights bill, although Keir Starmer is being sensible about it, this is ridiculous. We can't do this. He will fail. He will fail. The workers' rights bill will go through in all its lack of glory because of the backbenchers. He can't do anything. But he tried to reduce the welfare bill, the backbenchers. No, you're not going to do that. This country isn't being run by Keir Starmer and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. It's being run by a bunch of lefty Labour backbenchers who are really, really naive. And you're talking about what you're saying about the way Labour MPs think that all people are wonderful and there's no such thing as con men going into work and suing. Did you see yesterday, this was summed up, hilarious, yesterday on the Today programme on Radio 4, Amal Rajan, who's actually quite a sensible guy.
I like Amal, he's solid.
Yeah, he's an unusual character. I mean, he's left-leaning, but he's a sensible guy. Anyway, he was interviewing Lord Blunkett about the two-child cap. And so he was pointing out, Amal Rajan said, well, the thing is, Lord Blunkett, very BBC, said, people say, oh, well, all these people out of work just claiming for their children. He said 70% of parents who claim child benefit are in work, so they're not all scroungers, right?
Oh, yeah, and he got wronged, didn't he? He had to apologise for saying that word.
5 minutes later, he's kind of prostrate on the ground going, I'm so sorry, I used the word scroungers to describe benefits claimers, and I would never do such a thing. What is wrong with that? We know there are loads of them.
Scroungers. Do you remember that remarkable story of that gang in Albania or something living in palaces, and they had about a million fake people claiming welfare or something? It's just mad. Of course there are scroungers. And actually we were talking, weren't we, that if you fake laws, wrong uns in society flagrantly just go, right, you've changed the game, we've changed up ours. And to build upon the French police now being able to enter the water, way, the French can get their feet wet.
By the way, I bet they've been saying this for a year and they never do it.
What's hilarious is why this has happened, and it is all about the wrong uns in society know the law and they know how to get around it. So, right, what had been going on is the smugglers had increasingly used what is known as the taxi boat method, which consists of sending off a precarious inflatable boat 8 to 10 metres long from a point far from gathering areas. So, massive Chinese-made dinghy right up there, nowhere near where all the migrants are lurking around on the beaches waiting to get on it. It then tantalisingly comes down the coastline, picking people up en route, a bit like the number 72. And what the migrants have to do is wade into the water to get to the dinghy. Now, the reason they did this is because of the French police not being able to enter the actual water. So the French police would have sat there and watched these girt vessels coming down like this down the coastline, just picking people up. People going into the water to get the passing blimmin' boat. And the French police are like, oh, we can't do anything because we might get our loafers a bit damp. So whatever comes up. So now the French police are allowed in the water.
Well, they say they are.
They say they are.
They've been saying this for a year. That I bet they don't. It's police unit. The police union over there is very much against this. So they keep saying we're going into the water, and they never ever do. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Kev, what do you think about this story that the French, in their wit and wisdom, are going to bring back national service?
Well, why not? You know, good idea. Let's do it in this country too. I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, I've always sort of recoiled from those old traditional angry of Tunbridge Wells ideas, like no, but bring back conscription. But we are in such a mess now, such a social mess now, that I think I might sort of be veering towards being in favour of it. Why not?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I think young people could do with the discipline.
Our army is so depleted anyway. So a bit of discipline for kids, give them something to do, and bolster our incredibly depleted armed forces that wouldn't even fill Wembley Stadium if you put them all together.
You might be relieved to know. You might be relieved to know, Kev, or panicked, I don't know. But I took the decision a few months ago to do just that, to help bolster our depleted armed forces. And I'm in the process of signing up as a reservist.
Are you? Good for you.
Yeah, I am. I am. No, seriously,
What sort of rank do you think you'd be? You're not officer class.
I know. I don't think I should disclose too much on
Private Phillips. That'll be about it.
I don't think I should disclose too much on air quite what I'm applying to do. But it ain't firing a gun or flying a plane. You'll be pleased to know, because I don't think I'd be very good at that stuff. I am very good at the cryptic crossword though, and they used to recruit people.
I remember
in the Second World War to Bletchley Park via the Telegraph cryptic crossword. So I might not have much brute force or cunning, but I do have a relatively functional brain, some might say.
I agree with that.
And what would you look? I know you're way too ancient, Methuselah, to sign up as a reservist. But if there was a war tomorrow, what would you do?
What if I could sign up?
Yeah. What would be your thing? What would be your like?
You know, all these. When I was younger, when I was within the age group, all my, you know, this was during the days when all kids were revolutionaries and peace lovers. And I always said that I would sign up like a shot, because it would be interesting. So, you know, it would be a fascinating thing to do. Also, I'm a boy, I'm a guy, so I kind of like the look of weapons and things like that.
Yeah,
so
you'd be there like with like, you know, you're like a nice
deep intellectual approach to all of this. So yeah, I'd sign up like a shot.
Yeah, I don't think anyone won't be handling a weapon.
What would I do if there was a war?
Yeah.
Now that I'm too old, I mean, I'd try and help.
I reckon you would anyway. I reckon you'd be the first at your front door with a coal shovel or something. Just be like, I'm in.
Yeah. You got anybody I can shoot?
Oh, well, blimey. We'll probably get Ofcom onto us now. Kevin O'Sullivan does not intend on shooting anybody.
It was a joke, ladies and gentlemen.
It was a joke. Something we don't understand anymore. Kev, I love you so much. Thank you so much for helping this show continue a bit of a comic edge, because Lord knows we need it. OK, what about you? What are you going to bring to the table? Many mouths to feed now. Let me know. Give me a call, 03444991000. This is the number to dial if you want to be patched in the studio to have a chit-chat with me live on air. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message. 87222 is the number to send me a text. Like, talk before you text. One message I want to read out before we go to break. My lad came up with a novel idea. If you did 2 years of national service for forces or in the community, you get your university tuition fees paid for rather than have that debt. Andy in Cornwall. I think that's a really good idea. I think we could start to introduce national service as a way of saying, look, you know, you do this, you serve your country, you get trained up, and this is how we are going to give you the benefits. Although there are some toe wags who should just be dragged by their ear off to a military camp and made to sort of do circuits right now. OK, right, going to take a break now. When we come back, I can't wait to hear from you.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. I've just had some very, very sad news during the break. Sorry, I hate 2025. It's taken our best people. Peter Whittle, you may not know him, or you may. He was the founder and director of the New Culture Forum, a really important think tank. You will no doubt know people like Rafe Hadelman-Koo, who often comes on this channel, or Peter Whittle, who directed the New Culture Forum. He was brilliant, an amazing man. He's passed away at the age of 64. Peter did so much for this country. Why are they taking all the best ones? I'm going to read a statement from the New Culture Forum. I'm going to try to. It is with deepest sorrow that we announce the passing of Peter Whittle, founder and director of the New Culture Forum. Peter passed away yesterday evening, surrounded by his loved ones. It's hard to overstate the impact Peter and the New Culture Forum have had on Britain's cultural and political landscape since he founded the New Culture Forum 20 years ago. Peter's courage, passion, integrity, wit and intellect inspired millions in Britain and around the world to think critically, to challenge cultural orthodoxies and champion free speech. The New Culture Forum will continue to honour Peter's vision and values. I was so sad. I knew Peter a long time. He's the nicest man. So erudite and interesting and really unique. Like, he just had this soul and this presence, and he started the debate about things like the grooming gangs, about mass immigration, about standing up for British values before anybody. He really did, but he did it in the most intellectual, kind way. He was so important, and I hate 2025. It's taken the best ones. Oh, Peter, you were great, and may you rest. Anyway, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. It's like kind of hard when you know someone and you get the news. So anyway, oh, Peter, we love you. Okay, let's go back to the topics of the day. Give me a moment. It'll be useful to take a call. I can compose myself, I hope, before I start looking like the missing member of a KISS tribute act. Let's speak to Brian in London. Hello there, Brian.
Hi, Alex. Very sad news, that, basically. I listened to him a lot before that, basically.
Yeah, no, he was a really, really wonderful man, like really quite unique. They don't make Peter Whittles every day.
I want to say something about you, Alex. I really love listening to you. Your world knowledge is fascinating to me, basically, and I really miss you on the weekends. I know they do what they do on your TV program, whatever, but really, you're the only interesting one I really like listening to.
Oh, well, that's very pleasant of you. I think many of my colleagues are far better than I, and I must admit, I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to confess I was the one who said I couldn't do weekend breakfast because I live outside of London now. I bought my very first house, which, because the house prices in the capital, is nowhere near London. But also, I didn't want to live in London anymore, so I moved out back from whence I came for my own sanity. So it did mean the commute to get into the studios at 5 a.m. was a little bit of a stretch. So I'm sorry I've let you down.
That's all right. I think you did the right thing, basically. I'll tell you what, I did national service, basically, many years ago. I was the last of the national servicemen. I went in December 59, and after that they stopped it. And it was hell on earth for the first 12 weeks. I was in the infantry, and I was pretty fit. I've boxed, and I've done all kinds of things in my life. And they put you through hell and back. And national service, I met so many different people from England that I would never, ever met before. And I was just an ordinary working class blokes, and I met blokes from university, from everywhere. And I was lucky enough to get a really good job because I was a good sportsman. And I did what they call courts martials. I did trials. So I got all the paperwork and everything ready for a captain. And I went all over Germany, and it was a fantastic experience. And also, at that time in the UK, if you were doing national service, and half of my relations came from Southern Ireland at the time, if you come over here, you got lumbered. In other words, all these young people never come over. And the West Indians, after national service was stopped in 1962, there was quite an influx of young West Indians and Indians coming to this country. And if you had national service now, I think it'd be a massive block. I think they'd think twice if they had to do 2 years.
It's very interesting, actually. You know, if it's a policy that you come and live in Britain, you will be called up for a year to be in the military, whoever you may be. It is interesting. Although there's also the vetting, isn't there? Could we actually feel safe having people with access to military bases and weapons who have come from far-flung corners of the world? And, you know, it's interesting what you say there. I mean, look, if I am privileged enough that the armed forces should have me on a part-time basis from time to time to do what I can, the thing I'm really looking forward to is this. The wonderful thing about the armed forces is they're such a great leveller. Yeah. You know, you've got your guy who left school at 16 from a rough council estate who's fighting on the front line. You've got your privately educated, you know, titled, ennobled man. When they put on the uniform, they're the same. They're all equal. It doesn't matter what your accent is. It doesn't matter what your skin colour is. The only thing that really unites all of them is this passion to serve the country. And that's my kind of Britain. I don't care where you're from, what your accent is, what type of school you went to. If you love this country enough that you want to serve it, you're my kind of person, and I cannot wait to spend time with those people. Like I said, should I be privileged enough to have the opportunity. Brian, thank you ever so much for your call. Listen, we're going to take another break now because we've got another little section to cover, and then actually we're going to try and have a conversation about Peter Whittle as well, because I really want you guys to get to know this man better if you don't already. But coming back after this break, we're going to be talking about the NHS. The fact that there's now going to be a puberty blocker trial. I thought that we had got rid of all those things, but no, apparently the NHS is now rolling out a trial using children as guinea pigs. We're talking about that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's nothing that annoys me more than when we're supposed to be struggling as a nation. We've got no cash money and we just pursue profligate waste anyway. There's nothing that annoys me more when you've had a breakthrough in a matter that's so important and all of a sudden you realise you haven't won the day after all. Two stories now about the NHS. First of all, NHS managers who were offered redundancy, £160,000, some of them. That's like winning the lottery for the average person. Now they can go back to work after 6 months. Well, that ain't redundancy. What are you doing? Apparently some 18,000 office-based jobs are supposed to be scrapped as NHS England is abolished. So, yeah, West Streeting said, we don't need this quango anymore. It's an extra layer of bureaucracy. I'm going to get rid of it. But then it's like, well, are you going to? Because the thing is, once you've paid all the redundancies, it might cost more money scrapping it than keeping it. Well, what's even more ludicrous is they're scrapping it, paying people off, and then those people can come back and work at the NHS 6 months later. I mean, surely it should be, OK, go on gardening leave for 6 months and we're going to see if we can relocate you to another position. That's how I want my money spent. And then it turns out, after we had finally uncovered the horrors of using experimental medicine on kids, I'm sorry, if kids can't get a tattoo, if kids can't get married, if kids can't get a mortgage, if kids can't drink alcohol, children cannot decide if they want to take medicine that's going to fundamentally change their little bodies for the rest of their lives. And yet, the NHS, despite everyone going, this whole gender-bending thing just ain't suitable, it should come with a big PG certificate on it, make those decisions as an adult, be my guest, but not on children. Well, now, because that's not enough, they've got to find out, haven't they? They've got to be absolutely sure that that's the right thing to do. So they're setting up a trial to give puberty blockers to more than 200 children. This is barbaric. This is child abuse. I can tell you right now that that's not OK. Let's get the opinion of a medical professional. Let's speak to Dr. Lawrence Buckman, who's a former NHS GP. Let's start off, first of all, with the scrapping of NHS England. Managers who are being told, OK, there's not going to be NHS England anymore. Here's your golden handshake goodbye. Can actually just go back to work in 6 months' time. Make that make sense.
I can't make it make sense because as a taxpayer, I'd be outraged, which you are. But I understand the way the NHS redundancy schemes work. And unfortunately, they are allowed to go back to work. They obviously can't go back to the same job because that job won't exist anymore. But they could apply for another job somewhere else. And the NHS has always had that churn, both amongst managers and health and doctors and nurses, where they can go from somewhere to somewhere else. But redundancy is relatively uncommon. And as you rightly say, redundancy costs money. Would it have been cheaper to have given them gardening leave and then found them another job somewhere else? Well, I'm guessing it would. But I don't know the precise legal arrangements between those managers and the NHS management to see what they could and couldn't do afterwards. There is a general view that you can be rehired in the NHS in another capacity somewhere else.
This is the thing, isn't it, about a lot of public sector jobs. They have pensions, protections that in the private sector no one has because, frankly, it's not affordable. And it makes a mockery. I mean, look, my mum used to work for the health service in a bureaucratic function. And I've seen every single time there was a restructuring, we're going to now have PCTs, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do a round of redundancies. It just costs loads of money moving the chairs around, the deck chairs around on a sinking ship often. I remember when I actually did a bit of work during university holidays for the NHS, I was part of Agenda for Change. I was there calculating what people's new pay brackets would be. So I've seen it firsthand. I think we all know that the management layer of the NHS needs to be clipped back, but it doesn't seem like we're saving much money doing it. Let's talk more importantly, I would say, about the puberty blocker trial. Because apparently this trial of puberty blockers will ask children if they identify as two-spirit, which is a Native American concept of gender. I mean, Lawrence, when I was growing up, there's no such thing as I think I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl. And if there was, I probably would have thought I was a boy, quite frankly, because I liked, cycling bikes and making tree dens with my big brother. I always liked a bit of Formula One. When my brother was in the Scouts, I kind of wanted to join them. But there was never this idea, and I didn't know a single child growing up who were questioning whether they were in the wrong body. I just didn't. Maybe they existed, but they were vanishingly rare. Whereas now, because of the impact to me, this is my opinion, of all the propaganda, there's been this sort of huge mass feeding into our culture of this idea that gender's a non-fixable thing. And deeply impacted little kids. And now we've got a situation where little kids are wanting to take physical action, surgical intervention to treat what is a mental condition. It kind of reminds me in the Victorian era when they thought, oh, I know how to deal with PTSD. Let's give them a lobotomy. And I thought we had flushed this stuff out and realised that it was deeply inappropriate and that in future generations are going to look back on these years agog with what on earth we thought we were doing. And now the NHS itself, who is supposed to have been rid of all this stuff, is running a trial on more than 200 children. To me, and you can disagree with me, but to me this is 200 innocent little babies being used as guinea pigs because of adult fetish.
I might not use the same language, but I agree with you. I'm concerned that I have looked after children who've changed gender, and I agree with you, they are exceedingly rare. And the two-spirit thing, the use of that term at least implies that the people who are running the trial have some sort of, I'm going to be careful here, ideological approach to the way they're looking after children who may possibly wish to change gender. And I think a questionnaire is not good enough as a screen. I think people who are going to have this kind of treatment need to be very carefully vetted. And I am very sympathetic to the view that some of them will feel pressurized by social media or the culture, or this feeling that it's somehow okay, normal to change gender. It is not normal to change gender. It's an issue that needs to be looked after. And there will be a tiny number of children who really do need to change gender. And there we come to the concept of treating children rather than adults. And I think that is an issue. I think it's quite different getting an 18-plus adult to consent and trying to consent a child. The law is very complicated on consenting children. But I would be nervous that something this irreversible was being trialled almost as a routine. And I am nervous about the ideological background to the two-spirit idea.
I know. I mean, it sounds like hocus pocus, doesn't it? I just don't understand, when dysphoria is a mental health condition, why we're treating that with sort of physical interventions. I just don't know any other circumstance where that is what we do. Dr. Lawrence Buckman, thank you ever so much for joining me, and well done for being more measured on that topic than I am. Ain't my job to be measured, though, is it? OK, right, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'm pleased to say the brilliant Dr. Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, is availed himself to talk about the wonderful Peter Whittle. That's after this.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Now, earlier this year, I was privileged to make a documentary all about immigration and women's safety. It was the brainchild of Peter Whittle, and it was made with the New Culture Forum. And I had the honour of doing quite a few bits of work with Peter over this last year. And I've known Peter for at least 12 years. I remember when he stood as the mayoral candidate for UKIP for London. And I was aware that he wasn't well. And we've had the very, very sad news that he's now passed away, aged 64. I think he's a very special man indeed. Don't take that from me. Let's speak to Dr. Philip Kisserly, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, great friend of this channel. Philip, they don't make them like Peter, do they? He was incredibly unique. He was so erudite and intelligent and loved this country. He was one of the first people to realise that culture was the big battleground in politics. But more than this, my gosh, he just had such a beautiful soul. He was such a lovely man.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, he really was. He was just the nicest person. Probably, the nicest person I've ever met. Yeah. He was like a big brother to me. If I was happy, I'd tell Peter. If I was in trouble, oh God, I'll go to Peter. He'll help me. The New Culture Forum, he just made like a family, and we were all so close there, and we all still are so close. But he was so concerned with what's going on in the world, and he really gave himself over to fighting for what's good and what's just. And he was he did it with such grace and dignity and style. My God, didn't he have style?
Oh my gosh, he had so much style.
He was he was just I keep coming back to, but he was fun as well. We went on together a few years ago, and it was just laughter all the time. He was just such an amazing friend as well. He was a friend to me personally, but he just seemed to be a friend to hundreds of thousands of people who follow the New Culture Forum and who come to our events and who just constantly want to be close to him and who wanted to be close to him and speak to him. He was just such an amazing man.
He was, and people always think when someone passes away, everyone queues up to say how wonderful they were. But thing is with Peter, you wouldn't find anybody be able to say a bad word against him, because he was so unique. I can see him right now sitting there thinking, head tilted to one side, lips pursed, as he would do, and just also, shall we have a glass of wine? But he understood in a really prescient way, before anybody, I think, when he set up the New Culture Forum 20 years ago, he understood that culture was a massive battleground. And it's always been one of those subject matters that were pushed to one side, or especially turned taboo. You can't talk about the impact of immigration on culture, what are British values, all of these conversations, which now we're having all the time. Peter Whittle was doing it before anybody because he loved this country. He loved it so, so much, but it never from Peter came as something that was sort of little Englander or small-minded. You know, Peter was a sort of very worldly, culture-adoring gay man. He wasn't in any way, shape or form some sort of knuckle-dragging brute who wanted the clock to go back 20 years.
No, he was. I mean, he'd spent a lifetime in the media. So he was a director and producer on television. He produced the South Bank Show, for example. He wrote culture for the Sunday Times, and he really was a driving force, perhaps the driving force, but what we now understand to be the independent media. You know, he was doing his show. So what you're saying is his interview show was one of the first things on the independent media, and that in a way that saved me. You know, I saw that. And I kind of got in touch with him there and then, and it was almost, oh, someone else is saying this stuff, someone else is thinking this stuff, and that's what we get all the time from New Culture Forum. And he was instrumental in setting up what we call New Culture Forum Locals, which is our grassroots movement where everybody comes together. You know, it's a safe space for people to feel as though, oh, well, you know, it's not just me, I'm not just on my own. That's what he did. He brought people together. But as you say, he was just so sophisticated and worldly and just fun to be with. And he was the centre of that world in Westminster, wasn't he? We'd all go to Tufton Street there and hang out and just be with him, and he made things happen. You know, like you say, you made a documentary film for us, which was just the most amazing thing. You know,
and it was his idea. You know, I've been talking about this subject, but he said to me, come on, Alex, I think we can make a documentary together. And he couldn't have been more patient. So I was busy with work and doing this, that and the other. He had all the time in the world to help me as much as possible, doing brilliant research, making sure that every single thing that was said in that documentary could be stood up. And when I think of, you know, a lot of people who watch Talk will know so many people who have come out of, the New Culture Forum alum, if you will, whether it be Emma Webb, Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, Connor Tomlinson. You know, he had this ability to spot talent and bring together some amazing minds who now are out there spreading the word, fighting for this country in the media. And so that is his legacy. He really has been a great change maker when it comes to the national conversation.
Yeah, I think the New Culture Forum has been just so incredibly influential for all of the reasons you say there. It's a kind of incubator for talent. You can throw Charlie Downs especially into that.
Yes, Charlie, yeah.
Of course. So there are so many people, you know, Amy Gallagher, so many people. It did feel like we were a family with just a bunch of people with a massive voice, and that was down to him. He amplified that voice, and he made us talk right, not just to the country, but internationally as well. And I'll just always be so incredibly grateful to the man, because he was just the best of the best. You know, we always say, oh, he was such a lovely, when people die. It's absolutely true. You know, you won't, as you've just said, you won't see a bad word said against him. He was such a lovely man. He was so kind, but he was brave as well, Alex. When he got the news that it was stage 4 and it was terminal, it was when we were having our literary festival. He kind of got to know half an hour before, then went on stage and spoke to an audience, okay? And he was working right up until the end because it was all so important to him. It was about other people. It was about the message. It was about doing good. And for me, that is just the caliber of the man. He was just outstanding in every way. And, you know, I think we all loved him.
We did love him. He was so audaciously authentic as well. You know, he had his own sort of sartorial elegance and the way he spoke and his facial expressions. He was just quintessentially Peter Whittle.
Oh.
And I, you know, because people watching this might think, well, I don't know Peter Whittle. I might have heard of the New Culture Forum. I've heard of some of those other names you've mentioned because I watch Talk regularly. But if people don't know Peter Whittle or sort of think I want to get to know him better, I mean, there's so much stuff you can go onto YouTube and watch. I remember when I did an interview with Andrew Gold on his podcast Heretics, and Andrew said to me at the end of it, you have to say who your favourite heretic is. And I chose Peter Whittle because he's the original heretic, you know. If people wanted to go back and look at his body of work so his legacy may live on and resonate, and so people listening to this suddenly think, I need to know this man I'm hearing about. How can they do that?
Well, the best thing to do is to subscribe to the New Culture Forum channel on YouTube, and all his work is there, and it's very well organised. So we've got our we've got our documentaries, we've got our weekly shows, which are Newspeak and Deprogrammed, and Peter hosted Newspeak. But you can also sign up to New Culture Forum Locals as well and be part of our grassroots movement, which was Peter's brainchild, and Peter was absolutely passionate about people being able to get together and speak and not feel as though they were alone. So if you'd like to do that, just get in touch with us at locals, newcultureforum.org.uk. Click subscribe to the YouTube channel. Become a member as well, because we, that's what will keep us going for just a few pounds a month, and just support us and support his legacy, and have a look at those brilliant videos that he did. If I could just say one that really was amazing, it was his Heresies documentary on London, which just went massive, just absolutely captured as only he could. He was so articulate, so eloquent, just captured what was going on at the time. But as you say, Alex, he was just so far ahead of his time. He was doing this before anybody was concerned, before anybody, and he was putting forward that message in such a powerful way. And here we are talking about him and just expressing our love for the man.
Indeed. Oh, Dr. Philip Kistley, thank you so much for coming on. And Peter, diminutive man, but has left such a big gap in the national conversation. Such an important man. I love you, Peter. Oh. Hiya.
Hello.
Ian, sorry, I'm glad you're here.
I know. I'm here to pick it all up.
I'm tearing up.
Yeah.
Oh,
I liked Peter. He was a lovely man. I know he's, not everybody will immediately recognise who he is, but everybody would recognise the kind of work that he did and the conversations that he started and initiated. And he was an important figure in this place.
He really was an important figure. He really was the driving force behind the entire conversation about, I think, the impacts of mass migration, what it means to be British.
He was talking about this years before. I mean, a long, long time ago.